never thought my home would become a place of fear. But it did, on a cold, silent night in December. It started like any other evening. I had just returned from work, exhausted and eager to relax. After dinner, I settled on the couch with a book, the only light coming from the lamp beside me. My cat, Whiskers, purred softly at my feet. The quiet was comforting, a stark contrast to the noise and bustle of the outside world. Around 11 p.m., I decided to call it a night. I locked the front door, double-checked the windows, and turned off the lights before heading upstairs. Whiskers followed me, as usual, and curled up on the foot of my bed. I slipped under the covers, letting the warmth envelop me, and soon drifted into a deep sleep. A sudden noise woke me. At first, I wasn't sure if I had dreamed it. I lay still, listening intently. The house was silent, but my heart pounded loudly in my ears. I reached for my phone and saw it was 3:17 a.m. I was about to dismiss the noise as my imagination when I heard it again, a soft creak, like the sound of a floorboard bending under weight. Someone was in my house. My mind raced. I lived alone, and there was no reason for anyone to be there. I strained to hear, my body frozen with fear. Another creak, closer this time. I slowly slid out of bed, trying to make as little noise as possible. Whiskers lifted her head, sensing my unease. I grabbed my phone and tiptoed to the bedroom door, opening it just a crack. The hallway was dark, the only light coming from the street lamp outside filtering through the curtains. I listened again. Footsteps, slow and deliberate, coming up the stairs. I felt a surge of panic. My thoughts were a jumble of what-ifs. What if they had a weapon? What if they found me? I needed to hide. I glanced around the room, my eyes landing on the closet. It wasn't much of a hiding place, but it would have to do. I slipped inside, closing the door just as the footsteps reached the top of the stairs. My heart was pounding so hard I was afraid it would give me away. Through the slats of the closet door, I could see a sliver of the bedroom. The footsteps stopped outside my door. Silence hung in the air, thick and oppressive. Then the door creaked open. I held my breath, every muscle in my body tense. A figure moved into the room, shrouded in darkness. They were tall, their movements deliberate. They paused as if listening. I could barely see, but I knew they were scanning the room. The figure moved towards the bed, and I prayed they wouldn't think to check the closet. They stood by the bed for what felt like an eternity before moving towards the dresser. I heard drawers being opened, things being moved around. They were searching for something. The intruders seemed to take their time, methodically going through my belongings. I felt a mix of fear and anger. This was my home, my sanctuary, and it was being violated. Suddenly they stopped. The figure turned, their head tilting slightly as if they heard something. Whiskers, I realized with horror. She had jumped off the bed and was now sniffing curiously at the intruder's feet. They bent down, and I could see a glint of metal in their hand. A knife. My fear turned to dread. I couldn't let anything happen to her. Without thinking, I burst out of the closet, my heart in my throat. "Get away from her!" I screamed, my voice cracking. The intruder straightened up, their attention now fully on me. For a split second, we stared at each other. Then they lunged. I turned and ran, heading for the stairs. I could hear them behind me, their footsteps fast and heavy. I reached the bottom and dashed towards the kitchen, hoping to find something to defend myself with. I grabbed a frying pan from the counter, just as the intruder rounded the corner. I swung it with all my might, the metal connecting with a sickening thud. The intruder stumbled, falling to the floor. The knife clattered away, out of reach. I didn't wait to see if they were getting up. I ran out the back door, into the cold night, and kept running until I reached my neighbor's house. They called the police, who arrived quickly and apprehended the intruder. It turned out to be a man with a history of break-ins and violence. He had been lurking in my neighborhood, looking for an easy target. If I hadn't woken up when I did, who knows what might have happened. That night changed me. I no longer felt safe in my own home. Every creak and groan of the house set me on edge. But I was grateful to be alive, grateful that Whiskers and I had escaped unharmed, and I vowed never to take my safety for granted again. It was a quiet Friday night, and I was home alone for the first time in weeks. My roommate had gone out of town, and I was looking forward to a peaceful evening. I settled on the couch with a bowl of popcorn, ready to binge-watch the latest series on Netflix. The hours slipped by, and soon it was nearing midnight. I decided to head to bed. After checking that all the doors and windows were locked, I turned off the lights and made my way upstairs. As I reached the top step, I paused. There was a strange feeling in the air, a kind of stillness that made the hairs on the back of my neck stand up. I shook it off, blaming my overactive imagination, and went to my room. Lying in bed, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. I listened intently but heard nothing out of the ordinary. I took a deep breath, closed my eyes, and eventually drifted off to sleep. I woke up to a soft thud coming from downstairs. My eyes snapped open, heart racing. I glanced at the clock, 3:30 a.m. At first, I thought it might be the house settling, but the sound repeated, louder this time. It wasn't my imagination. Someone was in the house. I sat up in bed, trying to calm my breathing. I reached for my phone and dialed 911, but before hitting the call button, I heard footsteps on the stairs. Slow, deliberate steps, each one amplifying my fear. I quickly and quietly slid out of bed, clutching my phone in my hand. The footsteps reached the top of the stairs and stopped. I crept towards the door and listened. Whoever it was, they were just outside my room. I took a deep breath and opened the door a crack. The hallway was dark, but I could make out a shadowy figure standing near the staircase. I had to think fast. My roommate had left a baseball bat under her bed for protection. I tiptoed to her room, heart pounding in my chest, and retrieved the bat. The intruder hadn't moved, still standing there as if deciding what to do next. I dialed 911 and whispered to the operator, explaining the situation as quietly as I could. They assured me officers were on the way and advised me to find a place to hide. The intruder suddenly started moving again, this time heading towards my room. Panic surged through me as I slipped into the closet in my roommate's room, hoping the intruder wouldn't think to look there. Through the slats of the closet door, I could see the hallway. The intruder entered my room and began rummaging through my things. I could hear drawers being opened and items being tossed around. I tightened my grip on the bat, ready to defend myself if necessary. Minutes felt like hours as I waited in the closet, the sounds of the intruder searching the house echoing through the silence. Finally, I heard sirens in the distance. Relief washed over me as the intruder seemed to notice them too, pausing their search. They moved quickly down the stairs and I could hear the front door creak open. I waited, not daring to move until I was sure the police had arrived. I heard voices downstairs and the sound of someone being apprehended. I took a deep breath and slowly opened the closet door. The house was eerily quiet again, but the flashing lights from the police cars outside gave me the courage to step out of my hiding place. I met the officers downstairs, explaining what had happened. They informed me that they had caught the intruder trying to flee the scene. The police assured me that I was safe now, but the experience had left me shaken. As the officers left and the house returned to its quiet state, I couldn't help but feel a lingering sense of unease. The intruder had been caught, but the feeling of being watched, of my personal space being violated, stayed with me. I knew it would take time to feel safe in my home again, but I was grateful for my quick thinking and the swift response of the police. That night changed me. It reminded me that safety is never guaranteed and that sometimes the real horror isn't the unknown. It's the tangible threat that can enter your life without warning. It was a stormy night, and the rain hammered against the windows of my small apartment. I had always loved the rain, finding its steady rhythm soothing. I had just finished a long shift at the hospital and was looking forward to a quiet evening at home. I settled onto the couch with a cup of tea and a book, ready to unwind. Around 11 p.m., I decided to call it a night. I checked the locks on the front door and the windows, making sure everything was secure. My apartment was on the ground floor, and I was always cautious. Satisfied, I turned off the lights and headed to my bedroom. As I lay in bed listening to the rain, I felt a strange sense of unease. I tried to brush it off, telling myself it was just my imagination. But as the minutes passed, the feeling grew stronger. I glanced at the clock on my nightstand, midnight. I rolled over and tried to fall asleep, but a noise from the living room made me sit up. It was a faint, almost imperceptible sound, like the creak of a floorboard. I strained to hear over the rain, but heard nothing more. Deciding it was probably just the building settling, I lay back down. Just as I was about to drift off, I heard it again, this time clearer. Footsteps, slow and deliberate. My heart began to race. I grabbed my phone and quietly crept out of bed. I opened my bedroom door just a crack, peering into the dark hallway. The footsteps were getting closer. I stepped back into my room and closed the door as silently as I could, locking it. My hands were shaking as I dialed 911. The operator answered, and I whispered my situation, my voice barely audible. They assured me that police were on their way and told me to stay hidden. The footsteps stopped outside my bedroom door. I held my breath, praying they wouldn't try to open it. The doorknob rattled, and I felt a surge of panic. I looked around for something to defend myself with, but found nothing. The door rattled again, and then I heard a low, menacing laugh. I backed away, my phone still in my hand. The operator was speaking, but I couldn't focus on their words. The intruder began to pound on the door, the wood shaking with each hit. I was trapped, with nowhere to run. The only window in my room was too small to crawl through. The pounding stopped abruptly, and there was silence. I listened intently, my heart hammering in my chest. Suddenly, the door burst open, and a tall figure loomed in the doorway, backlit by the dim hallway light. I couldn't see their face, only a shadowy outline. Before I could react, the figure lunged at me, grabbing my wrist and yanking me off my feet. My phone clattered to the floor, and I screamed, struggling against their iron grip. They threw me to the ground and loomed over me, their face still hidden in darkness. "Don't scream!" they hissed, their voice cold and commanding. I felt a sharp object press against my neck, a knife. "You're going to do exactly as I say, or you'll regret it." I nodded, tears streaming down my face. The intruder pulled me to my feet and shoved me towards the living room. My mind raced, trying to think of a way out. The rain pounded harder against the windows, a constant reminder of how alone I was. We reached the living room, and the intruder pushed me onto the couch. They moved to the window, peering through the blinds. I noticed they were wearing dark clothes and gloves, their face obscured by a hood. "What do you want?" I managed to whisper, my voice trembling. They turned to me, their expression unreadable. "You're going to give me everything valuable you have. And then, you're going to forget I was ever here." I nodded again, feeling a small glimmer of hope. If I could keep them talking, maybe the police would arrive in time. I pointed to my purse on the table. "There's money in there. Take it." The intruder snatched my purse and rummaged through it, pulling out my wallet. They took the cash and tossed the wallet aside. "What else?" they demanded. I pointed to the entertainment center. "There's a safe behind the TV, jewelry and some more cash." They moved to the TV, dragging it aside to reveal the small safe. As they fumbled with it, I glanced at my phone on the floor. The screen was still lit, the call to 911 still active. The operator must have heard everything. The intruder managed to open the safe and emptied its contents into a bag. They turned back to me, eyes glinting with greed. "Is that everything?" I nodded, trying to look as compliant as possible. "Yes, that's everything. Please just take it and go." For a moment, I thought they might actually leave, but then their gaze fell on me, and they smiled, a cruel, predatory smile. "I don't think I'm done yet." Before I could react, they lunged at me again. I fought back, kicking and screaming, but they were too strong. Just as I felt the cold blade of the knife press against my skin, there was a loud crash. The front door burst open, and police officers flooded the room, guns drawn. "Drop the weapon!" one of them shouted. The intruder hesitated, then threw the knife aside, raising their hands in surrender. The officers tackled them to the ground, cuffing them and dragging them away. I collapsed onto the couch, sobbing with relief. One of the officers came over, speaking gently. "You're safe now. It's over." They took my statement and reassured me that the intruder would be facing serious charges. I watched as they led the intruder out of my apartment, their face still hidden by the hood. That night, I couldn't sleep. The rain continued to fall, a constant reminder of the terror I had faced. But I was alive, and I was safe. And for that, I was grateful. It was a quiet Tuesday evening, and I was home alone, enjoying the peace after a long day at work. The soft glow of the lamp cast gentle shadows in the living room as I settled onto the couch with a cup of tea and a book. The apartment felt safe and familiar, a sanctuary from the outside world. Around 10 p.m., I decided to turn in for the night. I checked the locks on the doors and windows, a habit I had developed living alone. Satisfied that everything was secure, I made my way to bed and drifted off to sleep, the soft hum of the city outside lulling me into a sense of tranquility. Sometime later, I woke abruptly to the sound of footsteps in the hallway. My heart skipped a beat as I lay still, listening intently. The footsteps paused outside my bedroom door, then continued down the hall towards the living room. Panic gripped me as I realized someone else was in the apartment. I reached for my phone, hands trembling as I dialed 911. Whispering urgently to the operator, I explained the situation and gave my address. They assured me help was on the way and advised me to stay hidden. I pressed myself against the wall beside the bed, heart pounding in my chest. The footsteps moved through the apartment, slow and deliberate. I strained to hear any indication of the intruder's whereabouts. Suddenly, I heard a crash from the living room, a loud, jarring sound that made my blood run cold. I knew the intruder had found something. Fear clenched my throat as I listened to the sounds of drawers being opened and items being tossed around. Minutes stretched into eternity as I waited, paralyzed with fear. The silence that followed was deafening. Had the intruder left? Or were they still in the apartment, waiting? I cautiously peeked out of my bedroom, eyes scanning the darkened hallway. The living room was empty, but the lamp had been knocked over, its shade cracked on the floor. My heart raced as I crept towards the living room, phone clutched tightly in my hand. I heard voices outside. The police had arrived. Relief flooded through me, but I dared not let my guard down until I was sure the intruder was caught. I heard shouts and the scuffle of feet, followed by a loud crash. Moments later, an officer burst through the front door, gun drawn. "Police, freeze!" they shouted. I rushed to their side, heart pounding with adrenaline. They led me outside to safety as more officers flooded into the apartment, their voices echoing through the quiet night. The intruder had escaped through a window in the back bedroom, leaving behind a trail of broken glass and stolen valuables. The police searched the area but found no sign of them. I watched as the officers collected evidence and took my statement. They assured me they would continue to investigate and urged me to stay with friends or family for the night. I stayed with a friend, unable to sleep, replaying the night's events in my mind. The sense of violation lingered, but I was grateful to be unharmed. In the days that followed, I installed motion sensor lights and upgraded the locks on my windows, determined to regain a sense of security in my own home. The memory of that night haunted me, a reminder of the vulnerability we all face.